So, amid all the news, bad news, horrible news, alarmist news about climate change and its impacts and end games and tipping points, it's good to find a uplifting story of modern human efforts that are still yielding some results. And there is a Harvard Business School newsletter called Climate Optimism or some such thing, which tends to synthesize actions and news pieces around the world which have positive news about climate action and so on. Okay, this is an example of a ibis called Toki in Japan, which has been re-established after it went extinct in one of the Japanese islands. Wild tokis have been brought back from local extinction on Japan's Sado Island. I don't know if it's pronounced Sado, Sado, whatever. This is also known as the Asian crested ibis. Japan's last toki actually died in 2003. And a small population of toki were then found in China, as we will see in a minute, and a successful breeding program allowed the birds to be reintroduced onto these Japanese islands, Sado. This bird has a long history, as again we'll see an infographic. It was hunted. It was considered a pest by farmers because it feeds in rice paddies, and only the elite rich emperors, whoever, were allowed to hunt it, and eventually it was hunted down to an endangered species and then went extinct. So officials initially struggled to persuade Sado farmers to switch to environmentally friendly fertilizers, as we know from Silent Spring, Rachel Carson's book, the story of the I think brown pelicans or cormorants off of California, that fertilizers, DDTs, and other chemicals have been a menace for birds. The creation of a premium toki-friendly rice band encouraged farmers to back conservation efforts. So obviously it needed community engagement to try to bring the birds back, because it's very easy for people to say, who cares about this bird? It is not good for us and our rice paddies. But then you can offer pathways in which they can see the value of doing this. So the fact file on the Japanese crested ibis that went effectively extinct in the wild in Japan but has been reintroduced over the course of 2 decades reads like this. Japanese crested ibis feared extinct in the wild until 1981, when a few birds were discovered in Shanxi province, China. Again, an example of what I mentioned before, of us assuming things have gone extinct, but nature makes the rules and biology finds the loopholes. So biology often exists or survives in refugia and in loopholes and so on, and there are many examples of such biological loopholes. Okay, Nipponia nippon is also known as Toki or Asian crested ibis. Its predators are snakes, weasels, eagles, and crows. In the conservation status, it is listed as endangered, but today a small global population is believed to be increasing under conservation programs. Its kins are the Japan's last wild-born of the species before a reintroduction scheme died in 2003. Past population known to be either permanent residents or migrants. Builds nests in tall trees and forages for food in wetlands and paddy fields. So you can see it taking material to build a nest over there. It has a body size of 75 centimeters in length. Wingspan is 140 centimeters, 1.4 meters. That's pretty large. 1,300 grams, so quite heavy as well. Needs big wings to fly around. Its diet is mostly freshwater crabs, frogs, insects, earthworms, and fish. The species declined rapidly from the late 19th century to mid-20th, the main reasons being deforestation, hunting, and agricultural pesticides. Rehabilitation involves farming reforms to reduce chemical use and developing irrigation systems that nurture aquatic ecosystems that allow these crabs, frogs, insects, earthworms, and fish to survive. Okay, so here the map showing the only known naturally occurring wild population rediscovered in China, Shanxi province, now with an estimated 4,450 plus birds, which is a fantastic recovery. Preferred breeding elevation for the bird is 470 to 1300 meters. Expected lifespan in the wild is about 16 years. It was reintroduced in Changyong, South Korea in 2019, and around 480 in the wild are found now in Sado Island after successful rehabilitation campaign. So in just under 2 decades, Sado's population of wild toki has gone from 0 to nearly 500. You can see it's a fairly big, majestic bird in wetlands, rice paddies, and so on. So obviously farmers won't be happy when rice paddies are damaged. Let's look at the timeline finally. As for the fate of the Japanese toki, conservation timeline is placed in this long-term history. So AD 720, going more than a millennium back, one of the oldest records of the bird is found in Nihon Shoki, Chronicles of Japan. In the late 1900s, late 1800s, guns became more accessible and hunting took its toll. So for centuries, the species was abundant in Japan and seen as an important cultural asset. Usually something seen as a cultural asset tends to be protected or at least not hunted down to extinction. But anyways, declining populations blamed on hunting, both ornamental value of features and for food. This is always a death knell for many wild species. Shark fins, rhino horns, these feathers and so on, when they become trophy items or some crazy idea about how they can enhance male fertility or whatever, then they can become really valuable for poachers to catch and sell. Farmers saw them as pests. By 1900s, population pushed almost to extinction, and 1930s a few dozen toki were left in Japan. Sad. 1974, the last sightings for decades of wild fledglings. 1980s, last 5 known toki of Japan are protected in captivity on Sado Island. By 1999, a male and female pair of toki from China are brought to Sado for an artificial breeding program. In 2000, several others follow in a deal where half the chicks born stay in Japan and other half were returned to China. China does this with panda bears and various other species which are given to different zoos and conservation efforts, and they demand some of the offspring back, which is okay. It benefits everybody else, benefits everybody including the species. Here in 2003, Japan's last wild-born toki died at the record-breaking age of 36, more than twice the average age. In 2008, captive raised toki exceed 100 for first 10 released into the wild. 2013, a total of 142 birds have been released on Sado, and 2016, confirmation of first known wild-born toki in Japan since the 1970s. So this is a key step where you release the bird into the wild. It has to survive, find a mate, and breed, and there has to be wild-born population that begins to then grow. This is a real rehabilitation and a fantastic story, right? So we are capable of doing good things when we put our minds to it. 2022, Sado's wild toki population reaches an estimated 480. So I thought for now this is a good way to end the chapter with a nice positive story about conservation efforts. There are similar stories from elsewhere. I have recorded some of them in other courses. So modern humans' interactions with the environment thus seem to have these intrinsic values, extrinsic values coming together, changing ways of farming, fertilizer use, etc., to help a little bird. Well, it's not so little, but in terms of just scale of things, it's one bird that went extinct and now it's being brought back. So how can these be built? We talked about the COVID lessons and whether they can be used to build social mandates. So people were excited about seeing things, species of birds and animals in places they had never seen before, and obviously for kids it's completely a new thing. So such values and behaviors are possible. So in the evolutionary context, the question of course is how to arouse this pro-environmental behavior and make them value cultural ecosystem services, non-market goods, and so on. Okay, so let's leave this chapter here for now. Then we'll come back and look at how to relate the marine isotope stage climate change over the last 135,000 years to various aspects of human evolutions and interactions between the different Homo lineages that survived, and then we'll come into the Holocene to the modern periods in the end. We are already in the modern period here, but we'll do that again. Okay.